mute themselves. So our first session today is Innovation in Scientific Publishing. And we have actually 5 speakers, Kimberly Kline, Daniela Hahn, Sejal Vyas, Lemberger, and Alessio Bolognesi, who each will present the innovations they have developed in their current position and journal. So our first talk today is from Kimberly Kline. Kimberly?
Hello, yes. So very good. So thank you very much for inviting me to join this interesting panel and conversation today. So I'm coming to you in my role as one of the editors-in-chief of FEMS Microbes. So for those of you that may not be familiar with FEMS, this is the Federation of European Microbiology Societies. So this is a very large nonprofit platform of all of, as it says, the European Microbiology Societies, and their goal is to bring scientists together, microbiologists, scientists together to sort of promote interactions, but they also handle a platform or a portfolio of awards and grants for travel and trainees and putting together conferences and different things like that. And they also host several journals, one of which is FEMS Microbes. So next slide. And so I am very involved in this journal. It launched 3 years ago, and so I was part of this editorial board from the beginning. And so just a little bit about this journal in case you haven't heard about it. So we are really trying to make this a very seamless publishing experience for authors. And so it's, we think it's quite straightforward and smooth. It's fully open access. We particularly are trying to promote early career scientists in our journal. And we do that in a couple of different ways. And I'll say that in the next slide where that is indicated, I think. Right. So this is just, I think, a sort of general thing about the journal. Again, it is fully open access. It's gold open access. And we cover really the diversity of microbiology. So all aspects of microbiology. Next slide. And so again, I'm one of the co-editors-in-chief, and this is a point I think is important for what we're trying to do in the journal. So we're not only trying to really include and promote early career scientists, one of our goals as well is to really promote diversity and inclusion at sort of all levels of the journals. And so you can see there are 3 co-editors-in-chief, Jana, who is based in Sweden. Myself, I am currently based in Geneva, but when the journal launched, I was in Singapore. And this was an important component of formulating this editorial board. And Kathleen is in the United States. And so this was a very purposeful decision to have this coordinated editors-in-chief mechanism, because we thought this would be important for covering sort of geographic diversity in terms of recruiting authors, but also reviewers and other members of the editorial board. And that has really bared out, at least in terms of the editorial board. The countries that are represented here aren't indicated, but I can tell you we have Europe, we have North America, we have Asia all represented here, and Australia as well. So next slide. So some of the things that we're doing, I mean, mostly this would be considered a traditional publishing, but we have a few add-ons that I think veer it into more innovative space that we can talk about here. So we are encouraging of preprint servers, and so we take papers directly from preprint servers. We have the option for a very transparent peer review process, so authors are all given the option to publish their review comments, reviewer comments and author responses, and reviewers can disclose their names if they would like. You recognize co-reviewers, so this is important in terms of early career reviewers. If a trainee participates in review, they get formal credit for this. We have scooping protection. We have publication fee discounts for members affiliated with societies, but we also have a mechanism to help offset these fees for authors that aren't able to cover the publication fees. And we do quite a lot with looking at metrics and helping to promote and showcase the impact of authors' research. Next slide. And so in terms of how we're trying to get early career scientists involved and promoted, we really encourage early career scientists to participate in peer review. So as I said, we can give them recognition for their participation as a co-reviewer, but we also have been quite active in recruiting an early career editorial board membership. And so we are constantly building this. We've had a couple open calls for applications to join this panel. And so this is constantly growing and evolving. And so we have the mechanisms to really make sure we do our best to try to include early career researchers in our reviewer panels for each submission. FEMS does a really wonderful job of promoting the publications in our journals and all of their journals through webinars. So this is a really great opportunity for authors, and again, particularly early career scientists that need a little bit or would like a little bit more publicity or screen time for their work. So there's the option for authors to do webinars on their publications, and FEMS is quite active on social media. So there's a lot of promoting of work as well in that way. And so I think I have one more slide. No. So really, this is in case anybody's interested in following up, but feel free to get in touch with me as well about the journal. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. So our next speaker is Daniela Hahn.
Hello. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks also from my side to inviting me to this exciting event, and hello and good afternoon to everyone. I am managing the PLATO project, and PLATO stands for Platinum Open Access Funding, and the PLATO project is a national initiative by 6 Swiss universities to further diamond open access in Switzerland. Next slide, please. So I would like to start with the question, what is diamond, or sometimes also referred to platinum open access? And I'll give you like a brief historical insight. So in an article in 2013, Christian Fuchs and Marisol Sandoval introduced the term diamond open access as an attempt to overcome the conceptual limits of the term golden open access, but also in response to problems that they saw with for-profit publishing, such as high publishing fees or high access fees, but also access inequalities that result from paying these high fees. And they defined diamond open access as a form of non-profit academic publishing that makes academic knowledge a common good. Even though the debates and policy interventions have now settled on a more pragmatic definition, you can see it here, that diamond open access or platinum open access is a publication model in which neither authors nor readers pay any fees. Still, the focus on inequalities and creating a more affordable and more sustainable publishing system did not get lost from kind of this earlier introduction of the term diamond open access. A bit in contrast to Fuchs and Sandoval, I would say that diamond open access is not just a variant of gold open access, but I think the debates over the last few years have shown that diamond open access has indeed become a publishing model in its own right, and this publication model is scholar-led. That is really important. That means that the control and the ownership of publication outlets such as journals, they remain in the hands of the scientific community, and is also based on shared values, as I already mentioned, inclusivity, diversity, and equity. Next slide, please. My next slide summarizes the main benefits and challenges of diamond open access. For today's panel, I would like to maybe focus on the challenge preconception, because I think it speaks most to what we're discussing here in terms of quality assurance and peer review. because we still see preconceptions from the side of researchers that not only diamond open access, but open access in general is variable in quality and also not really reliable when it comes to quality. So I can say two things about that briefly. First, I would say that the quality of a publication doesn't hinge on the publishing model, be it open access or closed access. And we also know that high fees do not necessarily translate into high prestige or high quality. And the second thing I would like to mention is that last year we did a study on the diamond open access landscape in Switzerland. And there we could see that all of the surveyed journals, so that took part in our survey, actually employed a quality assurance procedure, be it editorial review or peer review, whereby half of the journals adhered to a double-blind review, which is considered to be a high standard. Next slide, please. So since this panel is entitled Innovations in Scientific Publishing, I would also like to briefly address the question whether diamond open access can be considered innovative. It is true that sometimes diamond open access is described as a new or an alternative form of scholarly publishing, but with Pierre Monnier, I would argue that it is actually the oldest form of scholarly publishing, that researchers publish for their community and that researchers run journals or operate journals, for example, for their communities. It is actually, as Stephen Burani has shown, the case that the industrialization of scholarly publishing that we're still experiencing with multinational companies taking over, that this is actually quite a recent development. It is a product of the second half of the 20th century. But even if we say diamond open access cannot really be considered as a publishing model to be innovative, we still have to say that the economic models and funding mechanisms of diamond open access have to be innovative for journals to succeed in their operations, because in the current system, costs are calculated on the basis of individual articles, and diamond open access is fundamentally different from that, because here costs are calculated on the level of publishing entities, organizations, journals, societies, and so on. So we really need fresh ideas, innovative ideas of how to fund these journals. And this is definitely a key challenge that we have to tackle for the future to make publishing more sustainable. And that is also one of the goals of the Platinum Open Access Funding Project. Next, please. And this is my last slide. In summary, I would just like to highlight the opportunities of diamond open access, so what it has to offer. It is an alternative to commercial publishers that charge article processing charges and that have paywalls for readers. So diamond open access can be a solid alternative to these commercial publishing options. At the same time, it allows the research community to take back control over scholarly communication and publication system, and to kind of stop the spiral of ever increasing prices and fees for scholarly publishing. As such, I would say it is an investment in a diverse, affordable, sustainable, but also an inclusive publishing ecosystem of the future. Thank you very much for your attention. The next slide is just my contact. So in case you have any questions about diamond open access, or you would like to run a journal or publish in an outlet, just contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniela. So our next speaker now is Sejal Vyas.
Hello. Yes, thanks also to Julie for inviting me to present what we've been doing at Cell Press. In 2021, we launched Cell Press Community Review as a new model for editorial evaluation and peer review. And on our next slide, you can see that more recently. Next slide. We have renamed this to Cell Press Multi-Journal Submission to make what this process is more clear. And I'll take you through that in this, the next few minutes. Next slide. And so kind of a big problem that researchers face is there's a lot of journals out there. At Cell Press alone, we have 30 primary research journals that cover, all areas of science, as well as various society partner journals, reviews journals, and it can be, very difficult to figure out where to submit your paper, where it has the best chance of being reviewed, what the right target audience is for the paper. Next slide. And so what we came up with was this model called multi-journal submission that allows for simultaneous consideration of primary research manuscripts at 27 journals within our life and medical science portfolio, as well as some affiliated society journals in a single submission. The goals being to improve the author experience in peer review, in the peer review process, to help find a home for their paper quickly and increase the likelihood of peer review, and in doing so, increase the likelihood of success in getting published, compared to the more traditional transfer cascade models, and also to increase our editorial efficiency, to spend less collective editorial time by having by discussing manuscripts as a team between journals. Next slide. Oh, okay, there we go. It all showed up. So I'll just spend just a couple minutes here to kind of take you through what this peer review model entails. And so you can see along the left, these are all the Cell Press and affiliated society journals that are part of this multi-journal submission model. And the idea is that instead of submitting directly to one of those journals, you submit to Cell Press multi-journal submission through our editorial manager site, and you can select up to 6 of these journals that you were interested in having your paper be considered for. The paper is assigned to a single handling editor that does a full deep dive read of the paper, writes notes on the paper, and shares those notes with editors from each of the journals that you have requested, and potentially additional journals that we think might be a good fit that maybe you didn't request. And so if, editors are, from those different journals are then making their independent, decision for their journal, discussing it within their journal teams, of whether they're interested in reviewing the paper for their journal or not, if they see it as a good candidate for the journal. For papers where after this kind of process, there's a single journal that's interested in reviewing the paper, we would offer you a transfer directly to that journal to proceed with peer review. If there are multiple journals that are interested in reviewing the paper, then it'll stay at our multi-journal submission editorial manager site, and we'll review the paper for multiple journals in one, in kind of one peer review process. So we invite a single panel of reviewers. So that would be your typical, 2 to 4 reviewers to evaluate the manuscript. Those reviewer selections are discussed between, the journals involved, so that we make sure that we are covering the perspectives needed for, based on the different journals' scopes. And those reviewers are told which journals the manuscript is being considered for, so they can take that into consideration as they evaluate the manuscript. When the reviews come back in, the editors from the different journals are each independently looking over those review comments to make a decision for their journal on whether they would invite a revision or not, and reasonings for why. And, if they will invite a revision, if there's any specific scope of revisions, things they would say, we don't need this for our journal, versus, yeah, we really would need them to address, points A and B, and so on. And so a lot of times there might be differences in how a paper might be revised if you're aiming for journal A versus journal B. And we could break that down to the authors, so an author can make a more informed decision during the revision process of, what they would need to do to get into journal A versus journal B versus journal C. And we are very, open, especially if there's really distinct, revision options given, to, discuss those with you, discuss revision plans with you, to make sure everyone's on the same page for, what needs to be done for what journal you're aiming for. So at the end of this process, once you submit the revisions, and oftentimes we'll need to go back to the reviewers. If reviewers say all my concerns are addressed, all journals are interested in publishing the paper, then as an author you get to decide which journal you would like to proceed with. And if there are still some remaining conceptual concerns maybe for some of the journals, but technically it's a sound paper, we would offer alternate publishing options to you. Next slide. And so just to quickly summarize, what we see as some of the benefits of this process is kind of this efficiency in being considered for multiple journals in a single submission, and receiving that collective editorial guidance up front from multiple journals to try to avoid multiple rounds of editorial rejection prior to peer review. Also, since there's a single set of reviewers that are evaluating the manuscript for multiple journals, we're not going through sometimes this process that happens in the transfer cascade of having reviewers disappear from between, journal A to then it gets transferred to journal B. The revision requirements, can be really clearly set out to the authors for those different journals so that an author can make a more informed decision on their revision path. And just also a note that we also do pre-submission inquiries through this system, in which you can, if you don't have, your full article manuscript ready yet, but you want to get some initial insight into which journals it might be of interest to, you can just submit your title and abstract, and we'll give you that, and again, indicate some journals you might be interested in, and we will kind of give you that insight. Next slide. And just some quick FAQs that we tend to get a lot. So manuscripts that are submitted to multi-journal submission are held to the exact same scope and advanced expectations as a manuscript submitted directly to a journal through the traditional submission system. And they're evaluated by editors at those journals by the same standards they would use for a direct submission to their journal. And they're making independent decisions for their journals. For papers that are being reviewed by 2 or more journals, those reviewer selections are discussed among journal editors to ensure that all the expertise and perspectives we need are covered in that single panel of reviewers, and the reviewers are told which journals the paper is being considered for. We only consider primary research articles at this time, and also just a note that we've published in the original 20 Cell Press participating journals that started as part of the pilot. We have published multiple papers in across the board. And so then just for my last slide, and a quick note that we have multiple series of Q&As that we've done with authors that have published via multi-journal submission, ultimately ending up in various journals at Cell Press. I invite you to go seek these out and read directly what are their perspectives on their process. And final slide is just to acknowledge that this is a kind of a beast of a system to get to work and run, especially within a company, within journals that have set ways of doing things. And so I want to just kind of highlight the core team, as well as all the editors at Cell Press. These tiny pictures here are they're all very involved in giving feedback on papers, reading papers, handling papers directly, and making this process work. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sejal. So our next speaker is Thomas Lemberger, but I will stop sharing my screen, and Thomas, you can share your screen yourself.
Okay. Here we go. I hope it's going to work. Is it okay for you?
It's all good, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to exchange our experience with open science and the peer review process and participate to this panel. So I'm going to talk today about review commons, which is a sort of introducing a new culture of the practice of peer review as applied to preprints. It is a project that is supported by EMBO and HHMI. And it is part of a set of initiatives we have at EMBO, where we really try to integrate the practice of open science in scientific communication and in the publishing process along the different steps of the research process continuum, from data generation to publication. So I list here a few of the projects that we have at EMBO, but today we are going to concentrate only on review commons, which is really intrinsically coupled to preprints. So what is review commons? Review commons is a journal agnostic peer review platform. It performs the in-depth peer review of preprints in a way that is completely independent of the journals and independent of the journal's scope and level of editorial decisions. So the way it works is that authors submit their manuscripts, their preprint, to review comments. So we peer review only preprint, so we request the posting of the preprint before peer review. There is an initial relatively modest editorial selection. We send out roughly 80% of the papers that are submitted to review comments. We do this initial decision in consultation with an academic advisory board. Once we receive the reviews, these reviews are forwarded to the authors. We do not make any post-review editorial decision. We do not do any accept, reject. We also do not provide recommendation for specific journals. We remain really journal agnostic. Before we send the reviews to authors, we actually have a step of cross-consultation of all the reviewers that will see each other's report and can comment on it. The reviewers at this stage, the authors at this stage have the time, usually 4 weeks, but they can request as much time as they want, to formulate a response, an initial response to the reviews, at which stage we have this full package of a manuscript, the reviews, and the author response that can represent their point of view as compared to the arguments raised by the reviewers. This is the stage where this package can be forwarded, transferred to one of 28 journals now that are participating to review comments. If the first journal is not interested in the paper based on scope, based on the level of advance or any editorial criterion that this journal has, authors can transfer to a second journal, to a third or a fourth journal. Up to 4 attempts are permitted. When the paper is transferred for formal submission to a journal, automatically the reviews and the response are posted next to the preprint, making this reviewed preprint or referee preprint publicly available for researchers to already use and consult the expert advice before publication. If a journal is interested, they will typically ask for the necessary revision to meet their standard of publication. The paper is published, and most of our affiliate journals also then publish the full referee process, including the revision and the editorial letters. So these are our partners. EMBO Press, of course, is part of that. eLife, a company of biologists with journals like Development, Molecular Biology of the Cell, Journal of Cell Biology, and many of the PLOS journals. We have been joined now recently by Immunology and Cell Biology, Genome Biology, Biochemical Journal, Genes and Development, and we are in the process of integrating now the journals from FEMS Press, the Royal Society, and the Genetic Societies of America. We support bioRxiv and medRxiv as preprint servers. We hope to be able to extend, but with this we have a very good coverage, at least for the cell and molecular biology fields. So why do we do all of this? We have 3 major and I think very important goals. The first one is really to accelerate the access, the open access, of course, to peer-reviewed research. And we consider peer-reviewed research as essentially a preprint, a manuscript that is associated with expert, in-depth peer reviews. This does not obligatorily mean that the reviewers will endorse the publication. They may remain critical, but the study has been evaluated and scrutinized and analyzed by expert peer review, and the result of this peer review is publicly accessible. So we think this is very important to accelerate research. We want to eliminate cycles of peer review at journals. As you know, when a paper is rejected after peer review and resubmitted to another journal, typically the peer review is started from scratch. And for us, it is really important to have this multi-publisher, cross-publisher initiative that tries really to break the silos between publishers and to break a little bit the strategy where every publisher is trying to trap the authors in a single funnel. Finally, there is a little bit of a more philosophical goal, which is to spark a cultural shift in the practice of peer review to refocus the peer review on the science, whether the science is true, well supported, strong, provide the constructive reviews that allow authors to improve their science, but also have reviewers think what is the contribution of this piece of science in the general context of the knowledge of the field. So we think this is very important to have the review as broad as possible, but by scientists for scientists. And then, of course, the journals, they keep completely their function in terms of filtering, aggregating, and representing communities. Now, it is a cultural change also at the level of the funders and the institutions. What recognition can be given to an object like a preprint or reviewed preprint as compared to a published paper in a journal. We do not want to replace the journals, but we want to offer more opportunities, especially for young scientists, to demonstrate the output of their research. You are probably familiar with the postdoctoral fellowship program at EMBO, and we have changed the eligibility criterion for this program to not only count first author published paper in a journal, but also first author preprint with public reviews associated. This is a policy that has been sort of followed by Plan S, a consortium of funders, and we have active discussion. And I show here one example of a workshop we had last year to discuss with funders and institutions the recognition of preprint reviews. So this is what I wanted to show you. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. So our next speaker now is Alessio Bolognesi, and our last speaker for this session. Alessio, can you share your screen as well?
Yes, gonna go for it, and you let me know whether everything looks good on your hand. How does it look?
It looks good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so thanks, Julie, for the invitation, and thanks, everyone, for participating. I'm Alessio, and Head of Journal Development at eLife. And yeah, I'll be telling you a bit, following nicely actually from the talk that Thomas just gave. I'll be telling you a bit about the new publishing model that eLife launched at the end of January this year. And so this is the scheme. I'll guide you through it in the next few minutes. The first step is submission. We consider only preprints, and at this stage, normally each preprint is seen by 3 or more experts who consult together and discuss together to decide whether we review it or not. And these experts are essentially part of our board, which is made of about 800 scientists active in different disciplines, and they led the organization as such that was established as a no-profit organization about 10 years ago. And what I want to mention also is that this decision is not meant to reflect on the quality of the science, because we will tell about the quality with the public expert reviews and assessment that we will post if we review it. This decision is really essentially answering whether we have the expertise in the board to handle the paper, and whether the editors, when they consult, they feel that we can produce broadly useful reviews. So in essence, essentially, this really reflects the fact that we are not publishers and we don't take publishing decisions per se. What we are involved in is in post-publication assessment and evaluation of research that has been already published and available as a preprint. If we review, we are at this stage where there is no reject, accept decision after review anymore. So we will then publish, if you wish, if you allow this word, everything we review. And the outputs that we produce are 2, the expert public reviews and an eLife assessment. And the eLife assessment is a short 5-6 sentences summary, which is written by editors and reviewers together, and highlights the significance and the solidity of the findings as they are perceived by the editors and the reviewers. This process is consultative, as it was consultative already at the stage of taking the decision if to review, because the reviewers and editors continue, as it used to be in the old model, to consult with each other before we get back to the authors. Now, at this stage also, what I want to mention is that before we go public with the eLife assessment and the reviews, the authors have a chance to correct factual errors if there are any. And they also can send a response, which is not a revision and it's not mandatory, but it's a sort of revision plan and a document that they can upload, and it will be uploaded alongside the reviews and the life assessment, where they can explain how they intend to address the reviewers' comments. After this, the reviewed preprint with the eLife assessment and the reviews is published and can be cited already. And at this stage, we give control back to the authors in the sense that they decide what they want to do. They can do three things. They can revise their work according to the reviewers' recommendations, and then we will consider that, and we will update the life assessment and reviews accordingly. They can also take the reviewed preprint and publish it in another journal. It's fine with us, and they can get back to us if that doesn't work. And they can also call the reviewed preprint version 1 or any follow-up reviewed preprint versions a version of record or VOR. And this is essentially the end of the process. It's akin a traditional journal article for funders' requirements and all of that. And the VOR cannot be, it's the version that we send for indexing to Web of Science and other indexers, and can also not be considered by other publishers, whereas up to and excluding the VOR, authors can also take their work to another journal. And this is these points that I was mentioning now. What I want to stress to close this very brief overview is that besides giving back control to the author, the core reason and motivation behind the design of this is to establish a system where scientists and science is not evaluated based on where the paper ends up, so in which journal and the journal title where the research is published. But the idea here is to establish a system where you reward research based on what is published and not where. So in a citation, if you have eLife, that should not tell you anything about the quality, and the readers cannot assume that eLife in a citation, the name of the journal as in the citation, tells you anything about the quality. But if you want to know about the quality, you need to look at the eLife assessment, which is meant to be short and give you an idea, written also in a language that is broadly understandable. And then if you are interested, you can go into the reviews again to evaluate the quality. That's the brief overview that I wanted to give you. I also want to thank our funders and other organizations. Some of them are here, not all of them, that have supported and continue to support the use of reviewed preprints in research assessment. And yeah, thank you for the attention. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Alessio, for this talk. So I can see that we have already a number of questions in the Q&A, but so we will move, I apologize because this is a platform, but we will move in the next session in the panel, and we will start taking questions from the audience. So let's go to the other session, and we will answer all your questions. See you soon.